Hello and welcome. My name is Beatrice Bernardi and I am a Senior Analyst for Air Platforms. And it is my great pleasure to welcome you to this online intelligence briefing. Today, John Sneller, who is head of Jane's Aviation Desk, together with Mark Bobby, Principal Analyst for Aviation, and Charles Holosi, Senior Analyst Military Platforms, will present a session entitled Military Airlift Renaissance, New Players in the Arena. The IHS Jane's Intelligence Briefing program will consist of approximately 40 events during 2018 and is available to all customers of Jane's Intelligence Center and Module products, including the Market Forecast product. I would like to highlight that the information used to compile today's presentation has been drawn from a variety of Jane's content, but particularly from Jane's Defense Industry and Markets, Market Forecast, and Jane's Defense Procurement. Now over to John for an introduction to a new work order.
Thank you very much, Beatrice, and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to start with a cross-section of airlifters from across the world and try and give a sense of who the new players are and what their heritage is, so you can get a sense of proportion from where we were perhaps in the Cold War era to where we are today, and looking ahead where we're going to be in the next few years. So the information I've got is taken from Jane's All the World's Aircraft, and so much of the information you see here is from there, and this is extracted from the respective records in that rather heavy book that we have called Jane's All the World's Aircraft. So the first aircraft I'll start with is the A400M Atlas, originally known, I think, as the Grizzly in Airbus speak, but I don't think that went down terribly well with the respective ministries of defense, so it's now the A400 Atlas. And this aircraft came from an original European initiative to replace the legacy fleets of the earlier model C-130s, so the H and K models, and the C-160 Transal transport aircraft in the late 1980s. The broad requirement panned out as the Future Large Aircraft project in the fullness of time, and Germany became the first nation to sign a formal European staff requirement for the new aircraft in 1996. In March 2000, Belgium, France, Italy, Spain and Turkey identified a requirement for a total of 131 A400Ms, and with the UK then announcing its intention to buy 25, becoming the first nation to commit fully to the programme, although this quantity was later abated back to 22 aircraft. So the programme was officially launched in May 2003 with these 7 launch customers who were joined in 2005 by South Africa and Malaysia, although South Africa joined the list of cancellations latterly in 2009, citing unacceptable delays and increasing costs. So a total of 174 aircraft were ordered, and the first delivery was carried out to France, MSN 007, on the 1st of August 2013, where it was accepted by the French Air Force. So it is billed as a competitor to the Lockheed C-130J aircraft, and the A400M has very high performance and a fuselage profile which places it nicely into the medium to heavy transport market, so heavier than a C-130 but lighter than a C-17, to give you a gauge of that. Airbus Defence and Space states that with a 20-ton payload, the A400M can fly unrefueled for 3,400 nautical miles at 37,000 feet with a max speed of about 0.72, which is pretty good for a propeller-driven aeroplane of different airlifters. So I'll now hand over to Mark Bobby to talk about the fragmentation of the air transport market more fully.
Yeah, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Really appreciate the opportunity to present what I think is a very exciting market segment looking forward the next 10 or 20 years. And my role here is to really show you the evolution of the marketplace from one being dominated by essentially 2 principal players, the United States and the former Soviet Union to a market today that is quite fragmented. In fact, is made up of at least a dozen significant players. Next slide, please. So let's take a look at the history. Airlifters, in this case fixed-wing airlifters, has been predominated by U.S. and former Soviet designs going back to the Cold War era, the 1960s, 1970s. In this slide, you can see the airplanes that were in production going back 40 years, 1978 to 2006, and again, predominantly U.S. and Soviet designs. Today, we still have a U.S. design in production, however, only one, the C-130, but we have aircraft in production in at least 8 other countries, including 3 of the Airbus partner countries, 4 if you include Italy, Brazil, Japan, China, and even the Ukraine. Although the AN-70 is still considered a terminated program, there is the potential for that airplane to re-enter the marketplace on the strength of some external investment opportunities. The history, as you can see in the top of the slide, show the huge production ramp up in the mid to late 70s, the U.S. and the Soviet duopoly, based largely on the C-130, the C-5, the Antonov large turboprop family, and to a lesser degree the Antonov 124 and the Ilyushin 76. And again, that's the production curve from 78 through 2006. Today, however, we see a completely different story. From 2007, we still had the U.S. and the former Soviet duopoly, but we were moving into a new era with many new players, including the aforementioned A400M, the Airbus A330 tanker. We, of course, have gone through the C-17 and now have Japanese and Brazilian and Chinese programs that are quite impressive from a performance standpoint, still to be proven in the export market, but representative of a market that has become quite evolved and fragmented and no longer dominated by 1 or 2 companies.
I'm now going to take a look at the global trends in the medium and heavy airlifter market, addressing the strengths and weaknesses of particular platforms, and then focus on the Future Air Mobility Capability Program in New Zealand, which provides a good example of how the competitive landscape has changed in this market sector. Until recently, the C-130J had effectively cornered the market for medium transport aircraft, with deliveries for the US Air Force and other operators having gone on for 20 years. The Airbus A400M has emerged as a highly credible European designed and manufactured alternative, with the added advantage of a larger internal volume and the ability to straddle the tactical and strategic classes of airlifter. In addition, it has a solid order book of 174 airframes for 8 countries, and if it can fulfil its promise with the remaining deliveries from these procurements, then prospects look favourable for further global sales. Despite this, current operators of the A400M France and Germany have opted to also acquire the C-130J after expressing a lack of confidence that the type will be able to execute all the capabilities projected for it, such as in-flight refuelling of helicopters and operations into small airstrips with minimal infrastructure.
So we'll just summarize some conclusions. We've seen that in this webinar, new players have entered the military airlift market, and that they have been supported by a commercial but they have been supported by the commercial market itself and manufacturing experience in that sector, in the civil sector. In terms of China and Russia, we see propulsion as a major issue, still a big problem. Fuel efficiency, we've seen that it's around 15% of Western products, and there's a low economic life compared to Western equivalents. Also, the problem is the availability of spares due also to problems with Russia and Ukraine in Europe right now. So in conclusion, we can say that James forecasts a rapid expansion of the demand in the airlift capability to support various types of operations, including in harsh environments, as we've seen in the image before in Antarctica. So thank you everyone for contributing to this webinar, but before we go...